Okay guys, we're finally going to begin to take this little bugger apart right here. Basically, it's just like a Philco radio. It's some balls, maybe only 3 balls around the outside and a center ball, and around the outside of this shaft right here, and they ride inside of this brass shaft. They work the way I expect. So when you turn this shaft, okay, it turns inside those balls, and those balls turn, and they, as a result, turn this outer brass shaft. So let's see if I'm right about how that's put together. Let's take this apart. So, I'll bet this has never been apart before because it's really tight. There we go. Okay. I can see one of the balls in there, but it's probably really sticky and they're not rotating properly, and that's probably all there is to it. I can't imagine that they would wear very much. I mean, you know, wear out or wear big flat spots. Okay, so you lift this cover off, and I'll clean that cover. It looks like I want to be careful with that. It's not made of very stout material. It's just kind of thin sheet metal pressed into the shape of this cover. So I'll take care of that. So there are the balls. Now, just like a Philco, this center shaft here just will slide out, and there should be a ball on the end of this shaft. Okay, maybe not. This guy here looks like it's flat. I still suspect, okay, it's got a little divot on it. Can you see that little divot right there? That's like a little tip, a little pointed tip. It's very small, but you can feel it. Okay, that I will probably ride against like a spring or something, maybe a ball back here in the back of the cylinder. And then there will be a spring behind that ball perhaps. Maybe this one doesn't need that because you don't push it in. But in any event, the 3 balls that are on this brass shaft, they ride on this little race right here. A surface that a bearing rides on is called a race. And so this little concave surface right here, that's called the bearing race, and the balls will ride on that. Now this is pretty sticky. Okay, I don't see that there aren't really any signs of wear, but I'm going to need to drop them in this thing with a little bit of lacquer thinner. Okay, my friend lacquer thinner. Now I've opened the window already because I knew I was going to be doing this. So don't worry, all you guys that think I'm going to blow myself up. Let me soak this guy too. Okay, just drop that in there. Hell, I might as well do the screws as well. Keep everything in one place. What do you think? All right, we'll tilt that. I'm going to set it like this, kind of tilted off to the side here. I don't want it in my way, but I don't want it far away either. So let me get a really small screwdriver. We'll get those balls out of there. I forgot. All right, there's one popped out. So if you go down the center shaft here, you can get to the back side of these and just push them out. All right, nothing to it. There's the other one. Okay, there's 2 into the lacquer thinner. And this will be number 3. Okay. You see that they're not really coated with a lot of grease, but what is there is really sticky and hard. Okay. So let me get that in the lacquer thinner, get those cleaned up. It's going to be hard to see, but maybe I can show you what's down inside of there. There's not really much to it. I don't see a spring with a ball like on the Philco ones. So basically, it's just a cylinder inside, a shaft inside of a cylinder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just clean that out with a Q-tip with some lacquer thinner. We're going to replace all that nasty sticky grease with some new grease that's not nasty and sticky. All right, we're going to use my favorite standby, which is sewing machine grease. Look at that. Yuck. And sewing machine grease lasts a long time, and this one's easy to take apart, so that's a good thing. But sewing machine grease will last a long time. It doesn't really dry out as fast as some greases. I'm not a big fan of white lithium grease for something like this because it dries out too fast and it gets hard. I know that from working in cars, you know. About the only thing I ever used lithium grease for was if I couldn't get a hold of engine assembly lube, I would use lithium grease, but it's even inferior for that. we'll just kind of generally clean this puppy up. You know, I don't need that light bulb there causing me headaches while I'm doing this. If I remember right, that light bulb is good, so I want to take care of it. But it's a number 40, by the way. This Grunow uses number 40 light bulbs. Okay, it's a threaded bulb, 6.3 volt. This is actually a made in USA bulb, I'll be damned. It's a good bulb. I'll hold on to that. So I just want to just get this clean, make it presentable. It's not really dirty enough to cause problems, but you know, you want it to look good. Considering that this was not an expensive radio and it was new, it's led kind of a charmed life because most of the inexpensive radios got its snot beat out of them all the time. Alright, the inside of that is clean. The ball holes are clean. Now while I'm here, I might as well run some lacquer thinner down through these ball bearings right here. Okay, I'm going to turn it up this way and I'll run the lacquer thinner in from the top and let it run down. Okay, so let me do that over a tray so I don't make a mess. Alright, let's give this a shot, shall we? Once you get that nice and wet with lacquer thinner, then you operate it a few times, okay? You want to work that, if there's sticky grease in there, you want to work it loose. Okay, just operate it a few times like that. And what the heck, you can go in from this side if you want, if you don't think you got in there, but this one isn't that dirty. Sometimes I'll try to get in this little bushing right here too, but I want to be careful of that cardboard that's there. So I'm just going to do it a little bit and get a little damp, because that bushing is often the thing that makes it the most sticky. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and take this cardboard off after all. I'll tell you why now. See, I want to get to this. What this is, what this will be is that the end of this shaft will have a little point on it, kind of like that shaft I showed you from this end, okay? And it probably rides like a little bearing, a little jewel bearing right in that dimple in this cover piece, okay? I'm not going to mess with this. There's no reason to mess with that, and I'll only cause problems if I do. So all I'm going to do is get a little bit of lacquer thinner down there and kind of move it around in case there's any sticky grease, all right? It does move easier when I do that. Okay, so that's a good thing. Yeah, that's easy, making it easy. So that might be part of why it wasn't tuning right. Okay. Now, before I do deoxit on these fingers, sometimes there might be some grease, whatever, on these contact fingers, and I'll go ahead and do this and clean them, just clean them up a bit. All right, some more down in the ball bearings. Get it down in here, and that should be about the last iteration I need to do. Yeah. I'm not going to never ever try to brush between these if you can help it. You can wash it off over the sink and you can clean the edge. But you stick something down in between there and you're really risking problems with changing where how these plates sit. And if you make them touch each other, it'll short out and your radio will be dead as a doornail. It won't make a sound. Or it'll make a sound and then suddenly at the same place on the tuning dial every time it'll kick out. You'll hear a bit of static and then the reception will go away. That's because you're shorting the plates and it no longer has capacitance, so it's no longer a part of a tuned circuit. Alright, before we do too much more turning of this thing back and forth, let's spray a little deoxit right on there. Alright, and that way all this turning action that we're doing, the deoxit will begin to do its thing and start cleaning off that contact surface between the stator and that finger. Or the rotor and that finger, sorry. See, because on these things, the rotor, the part that moves, is the grounded part. The stator, the part that stays. Well, yesterday the battery died. I didn't know, but I had accidentally pulled the wall wart for the camera out of my electrical strip. And after running for a little while, battery just died. So, bummer. I'm not quite sure where it cut off, so I'll tell you what I did. I basically lubed this end little jewel bearing, cleaned up this bearing on the other end of the shaft, cleaned up and deoxided the fingers here, took care of that, and then I went ahead and did sewing machine grease in the main ball bearing. Well, it's a bummer, guys, but some of the stuff that got missed by the dead camera battery was the fact that this tuning mechanism wasn't working. I put it all back together and I turned it, and it would not turn the tuning condenser hardly at all. I tried everything I could think of, stickier grease, no grease, lots of grease, nothing worked. It turned out, to my surprise, that the bearing race on that small inner shaft was worn so badly that there wasn't enough pressure on the balls. So my idea is to increase that pressure on those balls using a little grease-resistant, oil-resistant O-ring. I figure I'd put it on over that bearing race, push the whole assembly back into the cylinder there inside the balls, and that O-ring would give the friction to the balls to enable it to work. So let's just see how it works out, okay? Okay, so let's take this little O-ring. I'll try this anyway. It can't hurt. It fits a little loose, but maybe when it's pushed in there it'll help. It'll squeeze it down a bit. I don't know. But it's worth a try. So you fit that in there. And what I'm going to do is take these balls out first. I'll show you why in a second. So I need something to collect them. Try not to get them dirty or wipe all the grease off because I don't want to make a mess. Alright, push every one of them out of there. Great. Now I'm going to go ahead and push this guy back in. And hopefully I can get that O-ring to go all the way down. Nope, it wants to come off up on the shaft. Now, that might work. So if I can keep the O-ring in that race, I think I'll be okay. But it wants to come out of that race, because it doesn't want to go down in that hole there. Okay, let me try a different approach. Right now we are experimenting, okay? Okay, so I got the O-ring in this hole, down in there in that cylinder. Now if I can just get that little race to pop inside of that O-ring, I'll be golden, I believe. Almost there, almost got it. I have that on there now, okay? What I have so far is hard to see in there, but that O-ring, I pushed it into the hole and got it positioned so that I could slide the shaft in and get it inside the O-ring and pop the O-ring over that little race area. Now, what I'm going to do is pop these bearings in here. They won't want to stay now because they don't go in as far. They want to get pushed back out. That's okay. That means that they're going to be pushing against something. Remember those little games that you used to get in Cracker Jacks that had a little ball and some holes, and you tried, or maybe several little balls, and you tried to get the balls in the holes? It's kind of like what I'm doing now. Maybe if I put some grease on them, they'll stay put. Just long enough to install that cover, and we'll see how it works. I got a feeling that's not going to work too well. Well, there's only one approach left. These are too worn. It's not going to work. And so what I'm going to do, and it's going to make you all cringe, but I'm going to leave those balls out of there entirely. And I'm going to make this shaft, I'm going to secure this shaft to that brass so that it tunes it directly without the reduction, because there's no other way. That's a nice feature, but it isn't going to work. Now I'm going to use rubber cement so that it isn't permanent. You can always get it out of there, and we'll see what we come up with. We'll see how it works that way. So basically I'm going to take this shaft and I'm going to mount it in here with some rubber cement to kind of fill up that gap. This won't give you the fine, you won't have the fine tuning, but you don't have anything right now because this shaft is too worn right here. I can feel a very deep groove, and that means that this radio was used a lot, and this thing was never ever lubricated. And so that groove makes it so that this isn't going to work. And I can't put bigger balls in there because they won't fit in these holes. And those holes are kind of cupped, you know, so that the balls fit in there properly. So there really is no other way to make this happen. That's sad, but it's not the end of the world. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this out and make this happen. Okay, guys. I found something that works, actually. So let me show you what I did. Okay. I cleaned all of this out because I was going to try something with adhesive, but that just bugs me. That didn't feel right. So I started looking real carefully at this guy right here. And I was trying to put an O-ring on this little gap right in here, this little spot here that's so worn. And maybe if I had a small enough O-ring that'd work, but I don't know if I could find an O-ring that small. So what I decided to do instead after thinking about it was, what if I just moved this shaft that way, toward the knob, just a little bit, so that the ball rode on a different part of this race right here that isn't worn, okay? And you force that ball to ride on that part of the race. What would happen then? What I did was put an O-ring on this part of the shaft right here. There's a little step inside that cylinder that this part here, this step here fits into. But by putting an O-ring there, I kind of move it out about 1 millimeter or so. And that's actually quite a bit, but I move it out about 1 millimeter or so, and that will force those balls to ride here on this outer edge of the race, like I said. And I'm not going to use a lot of lubricant because I think that ball slipping is also part of the problem on this particular set, right? So you might say, well, you should lubricate it because it'll seize up. And there's a possibility of it, okay? This is an aluminum part, it's not steel, so there is a possibility of some galling. But if I put lubricant on there, it'll slip all the time. And I don't think that's going to work. Those are chrome balls. This thing isn't seeing a lot of high-speed stress or anything like that. So I think it's a better gamble to put this together fairly dry and do it this way rather than trying to glue the thing, which was my only other alternative. So I've cleaned all this out. I'm going to slip this in here. And really, I could lubricate up in here, which I might do. Okay, I'll just put a tiny bit up in this part of the shaft because that part seems to always catch a little wear in the other radios, and you can see wear on this one. I'll put a little bit of lubricant up there. And that O-ring will actually seal that lubricant from too much of it getting down where the balls are. Okay. Slip that in there. All right, so now we're in position. That's actually pushed out toward the knob side a little more than it was before. And that will force those balls, that will force the balls to ride in it just a little differently. Put the balls in dry, and then slip the cover over it. And let's just hold the cover in place, see if we have any joy here. Not quite enough. It's close. It wants to. It's not quite enough. And I think another O-ring is going to be too much. Yeah, that'll be too much. It won't work. I gotta tell you, this is a frustrating situation. Just not quite enough. Damn. Let me see what happens if I tighten this down. I doubt it's going to help. It is these kinds of things that trip you up and slow you down on a radio. And you know, you would think it'd be easy to get this radio done in a couple of days, but it's this kind of stuff that catches you. And every radio has its share of these. That's the trick of antique radios. Yeah, this isn't going to do the trick. I'm pretty sure. Well, maybe. I'll be damned. Check that out, guys. Now the cool thing about this solution is it's easy enough to duplicate. If it wears out or stops working, I can do it again. Maybe get a slightly thicker O-ring or whatever. Maybe that'll work. That's really cool. I like that. Check that out. I still get the fine tuning, and it works. I'll be darned. Let's just see how long it works. I mean, you know, I'm going to be tuning this radio a lot as I align it and stuff, so that'll kind of tell me if it's going to stay working or not. All right, so for right now, we are working. And let's just hope it stays that way. Okay, let's get ready to mount this onto the chassis. First thing I want to replace this grommet set. As I showed you before, these things are hard, like almost like plastic or phenolic. They're hard. You know what? That is not rubber. These guys here are actually phenolic. You know, it took me cleaning it up to see that. I just thought it was hardened rubber. Remember, I commented earlier that this was like plastic. So that was what was there. That's what I shall put there. I was actually going to try and mimic it by using these two grommets here, and one is a tuner grommet from a Philco, and one is, I'm not sure what this one is here. But anyway, they both come from other kinds of radios, but I thought they fit together, one inside the other, like so. I've seen lots of radios like that. And then you put the two, you know, you kind of, it's much easier when you get creative about lubricating them. So I thought they went together kind of like that, you know, sandwiching the, and I would have cut one half of this grommet off and used this way. But these are not rubber, so there's no, I'm not going to replace them with rubber. That makes it easier, I suppose. The way this was assembled was this guy sat on here, just like that. And you know, here's the deal. If I did put a grommet there, I'd have to put a washer there to keep this thing from slicing the grommet in half. Okay, that much I know. So it's pretty clear from the witness marks on this little phenolic washer how that works. So it sits like this. And then let me take these screws off, and then this thing mounts right to this little plate on the chassis. So get these screws off. Now, how did these wires go? This is the trick, isn't it, guys? The way this mounts up is like this. Okay, so there's only one hole right here. And these wires have to go through that hole, and I believe they all three went through it. Or at least two of them, and I think it was all three. So that kind of makes it fun for getting this tape through there, because I want to leave the tape on. So I always usually kind of roll it like one of those old-fashioned cigarettes. You guys, you know what I mean. And you put one through at a time, because I want the tape to stay in place. Let's just see. Let's just try my idea out. I could be wrong. It happens all the time. There's a surprise for you. Shove that wire through. That one doesn't want to go through without giving me hell. Okay, just one more. Reach up in there and grab those wires and kind of pull them through so I can make room for that third wire. Okay, got all three wires poked through, kept the tape on all of them. Not sure if this is what I'm really supposed to do or not. Sure looks like it. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to go look at the photographs. Mere minutes later. Alright guys, that was dumb. One of these wires does not go through this hole. It goes around through this slot right here. So I'm going to pull that wire back out. It's this front one. I'll probably tear the tape off when I do that. That's alright. There we go. Now, while it's still out, I want to go ahead and put this phenolic on here. Get that positioned. Set that in place. Just want to get that something started so I can work with the rest of it. Not very many turns to tighten those guys. They're really coarse sheet metal screws, but that's what they came with. Tuning condenser is on there now, and then I now have a nut down in there I need to get installed. So let's take a look here. Alright, you see the stud poking through from the bottom now, right there where my pliers are pointing. Let me take this phenolic, this little washer. Now this thing was loose, and so what I'm going to do is there's enough of a stud here that I have room to put a washer, a flat washer, and a star washer so that I can secure this better. Pardon my head there. The little raised section on the phenolic washer kind of fills that hole that stud is peeking up through. So you need to center it. It helps to center the, position this tuning condenser in the right place by centering the stud through that hole. And it also keeps it from wiggling side to side. So you kind of have to get this in your tweezer nose, come in here from the side and drop it down, okay? And you kind of wiggle it around a little bit till it rests in the right place. Now this thing originally just had this nut on there, but I'm going to go ahead and get myself a little lock washer. I'll probably get a spring washer, a wavy lock washer, because that won't tear up the phenolic, but it will help lock this nut down. Shoot, I didn't really have a star or a wavy washer that would work, so I'm going to have to use one of my star washers instead. I've been complaining for a long time that I was about to run out of star washers. I finally ordered them. They should be here any time from Amazon. So I'm dropped that flat washer on there. You see there's plenty of stud left. Go ahead and grab a wavy or a star washer. This should fit, but I might not have the right size. I sure hope I do. There we go. Okay, and I want to drop the nut on. All right, so now I can get my nut driver on it. Okay, tighten her down. Just like you saw before in the video, you've got two wires going in this hole right here. I went back and reviewed the video, and sure enough, that's what it was. And then one wire coming through this slot right here. Okay, so we're good to go. So there we have it. Tuning condenser is installed. Well, that's all we have time for today, boys and girls. Tune in next time when we finish up the electrical connections of this tuning condenser and we get to work on that speaker. Oh boy, sounds like fun, doesn't it? We're going to have this thing wrapped up before you know it and playing, and it's going to be great because we get to go on to the next radio. All right, so from your Western Outpost in Salt Lake City, this is Michael. That's all for now.